still talking about the flashback where her grandfather got her to jump in or taught her to go swimming. And he says, "How about the diving board?" She goes, "Especially not that." "All right," he told me. He sat next to me on the edge. Even back then, when he was younger and stronger, I remember thinking about how old he looked compared to my friend's grandparents. My grandparents were one of the last couples who chose to be matched later in life. They were 35 when they were matched. My father, their one child, wasn't born until 4 years later. Now, no one is allowed to have a child after they turn 31. Another rule. The sun shone right through his silver hair and made me see each strand even when I wasn't looking for such detail. It made me sad, even though he made me angry. "This is exciting," he said, kicking his feet in the water. "I can see how you'd never want to do anything but sit." I heard the teasing in his voice and turned away. Then he stood up and walked toward the diving board. "Sir," said the water guard in charge of the pool. "Sir?" "I have a recreational pass," Grandfather told her, not stopping. "I'm in excellent health." Then he climbed up the ladder to the diving board, looking stronger and stronger the higher he climbed. He didn't look over at me before he jumped. He went right in. And before he broke through the surface of the water, I was on my feet, walking across the hot, wet cement to the high dive ladder, the soles of my feet and my pride both on fire. And I jumped. "You're thinking of the pool, aren't you?" he asks me now. "Yes," I say, laughing a little. So now we're back in present tense, right? She was thinking about that, now she's back with the conversation with her grandfather. "You didn't keep me safe then. You practically dared me to leap to my death." And then I cringe, because I didn't mean to say that word. I don't know why I'm afraid of it. Grandfather isn't. The society isn't. I shouldn't be. Grandfather doesn't seem to notice. "You were ready to jump," he says. "You just weren't sure of it yet." We both fall silent, remembering. I try not to look at the timepiece on the wall. I have to leave soon so I can make curfew, but I don't want Grandfather to think that I'm marking the minutes. Marking time until our visit is over. Marking time until his life is over. Although if you think about it, I am marking time for my own life too. Every minute you spend with someone gives them a part of your life and takes part of theirs. Isn't that an interesting saying? Kind of makes you think about where you're spending your time and who you're spending it with, who's worth giving your time to. Grandfather senses my distraction and asks me what is on my mind. I tell him, because I won't have many more chances to do so, and he reaches out and grips my hand. "I'm glad to give you part of my life," he says, and it is such a nice thing to say, and he says it so kindly that I say it back. Even though he is almost 80, even though his body seemed frail earlier, his grip feels strong, and again, I feel sad. "There's something else I wanted to tell you," I say to Grandfather. "I signed up for hiking as my summer leisure activity." He looks pleased. "They've brought that back?" Grandfather used to hike as one of his leisure activities years ago, and he's talked about it ever since. "It's new this summer. I've never seen it offered before." "I wonder who the instructor is," he says thoughtfully. Then he looks out the window. "I wonder where they'll take you to hike." I follow his gaze again. There isn't much wilderness out there, though we have plenty of green space, parks and recreation fields. "Maybe to one of the larger recreation areas," I say. "Maybe to the hill," he says, the light returning to his eyes. The hill is the last place in the city that has been left forested and wild. I can see it now, its prickly green back rising out of the arboretum where my mother works. It was once mostly used for army training, but since most of the army has moved to the outer provinces, there isn't as much need for it anymore. "Do you think so?" I ask, excited. I've never been there before. I mean, I've been to the Arboretum lots of times, of course, but I've never had permission to go on the hill. "You'll love it if they let you hike the hill," Grandfather says, his face animated. "There's something about climbing to the highest point you can see, and there's no one clearing a path for you, no stimulator. Everything's real." Do you really think they'll let us hike there? I ask. His enthusiasm is contagious. I hope so. Grandfather gazes out the window in the direction of the arboretum, and I wonder if the reason he spends so much time looking out lately is because he likes to remember what he carries within. It is as though he can read my mind. I'm nothing but an old man sitting here thinking about his memories, aren't I? I smile. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, at the end of life, it's encouraged. That's not exactly what I'm doing, Grandfather said. Oh? I'm thinking. Again, he knows my thoughts. It's not the same as remembering. Remembering is part of it, but not all. What are you thinking about? Many things. A poem, an idea, your grandmother. My grandmother died early of one of the last kinds of cancer when she was 62. I never knew her. The compact was hers before it was mine, a gift from her mother-in-law.
One of the last kinds of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So they cured cancer.
That's what it sounds like, right?
That's exciting.
So we've got all these rules on one hand, but on the other, getting rid of cancer is a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah.
So maybe some good has come from this?
I have a question.
Yeah.
But it's not about the book.
Okay, then you have to wait.
It's about the crabs.
You have to wait. What do you think she would say about my match? I ask him. About what happened today? He's quiet, and I wait. I think, he says finally, she would ask you if you wondered. I want to ask him what he means, but I hear the bell ringing, announcing that the final air train for the Burrows will be coming through soon. I have to go. Kasia, Father says as I stand up, you still have the compact I gave you, don't you? Yes, I say, surprised that he would ask. It's the most valuable thing I own, the most valuable thing I will ever own. Will you bring it to my final banquet tomorrow? He asks. Tears well in my eyes. He must want to see it again to remember my grandmother and his mother. Of course I will, Grandfather. Thank you. My tears threaten to spill over onto his cheek as I bend down to kiss him. I hold them back. I don't cry. I wonder when I can. It won't be tomorrow night at the final banquet. People will be watching then, to see how Grandfather handles leaving, and to see how we manage being left. As I walk down the hall, I hear other residents talking to themselves or to visitors behind their closed doors, and the sound of ports turned up loud because many of the elderly cannot hear well. Some rooms are silent. Perhaps some are like Grandfather, sitting in front of open windows and thinking about people who are no longer here. She would ask you if you wondered. I step into the elevator and push the button, feeling sad and strange and confused. What did he mean? I know Grandfather's time is running out. I've known this for a long time. But why, as the elevator's doors slide shut, do I suddenly feel that mine is running out as well? My grandfather would want to know if I wondered if it wasn't a mistake after all, if Kai were meant to be my match. For a moment I did. When I saw Kai's face flash in front of me so quick I couldn't even see the color of his eyes, only the dark of them as they looked back at me, I wondered, is it you?